Okay, here we are again. The next thing that I wanted to show you guys was how to create a door, but then I realized I had to create another room for that. And if I'm going to create another room, I'm going to use some tools which I haven't showed you yet, so I think I should just go ahead and show you guys those tools. The next one I want to make is a corridor where you have to fight a lot of enemies. For now, I'm just going to use a placeholder foreground. It's actually blue.gif. Let me show you what that looks like. It is literally just a small square that is blue. And since I'm just looking for a placeholder for now, that works for me. And as you can see, it's completely blue. And I used the wrong out of bounds color, but I can go and change it. Out of bounds color, gray. Ta-da! And I can still scroll left and right. It doesn't look any different at all because I don't have any static blocks yet. But I want some static blocks, so let me bring up the cell thing. Now, I've put together a number of static blocks here. If I want to reuse them, what I do is I go to this one, this purple tile here on the layer control panel. It says export current view. Now this lets you do a number of different things. It lets you export the palette, import the palette, export the current view, which is essentially take a screenshot and save it somewhere. I'm going to say export the palette. You want to select everything here. You can select which static blocks to put in the export file and which ones not to. You switch them on and off by clicking on them. And you can export more than just static blocks. There can be background widgets, commentary widgets, conveyors, moving blocks, foreground widgets. All of that is stuff which I'm going to have to get into later. You know, you're allowed to select here, but you can also just click export all. Then you just put a file here. I'll just say tutorial static blocks. Just call that good. Then I go back to this one, which is my corridor. Click export current view. Maybe I should get a better one for that, but this is a proof of concept. Click import palette, tutorial static blocks, and voila. Here they all are. So I'm going to fill the corridor in. I'm going to put this all along the floor. Fill this in for the wall. Fill this in for the other wall. Put the ceiling in place. Oops. Well, that's what erasers are for. Just keep filling in the ceiling like so. And you know what? I should probably have some platforms here and there. So I'll put this here, put this one up here, and you know what? Just going to put a wall right in the middle there. Just an obstacle to moving forward. Bunch of platform tiles. Actually, probably I'll want this space for another door going someplace else, so I'll take this out. So as you can see, we've got a playing area here. Can fill it in with enemies. If I wanted to, I could fill it in with enemies now. In fact, why don't I just make this a combination enemy and export tutorial. Now, these blue and red enemies do not move, so you can just place them and that's it. The green enemy moves up and down. What you have to do when you place him is, as soon as you place him, then this sort of a bar follows your mouse around. That bar basically shows you how far the enemy is going to move up or down. And this blue bar, which I'm moving around, says how high he'll go above his starting point. This orange bar will show you how low he'll go below his starting point. Just click and then his starting points will be set. If you decide you want to change them, go to the select tool here, select him, then you right click and there's a bunch of different things you can decide. Change direction, that just changes the initial direction which he travels in. This circle with an arrow sticking out of it, that basically decides that. Change min-max, and then it automatically goes into the mode where you are selecting the minimum and the maximum for this guy's movement. So that's that for the green enemy, who moves up and down. The gray enemy moves left and right. I'll put him up here. And there's the green bar, green-yellow bar, that shows how far to the left he goes. You set that one first. Click, it's set. Then there's a purple bar which shows how far to the right he moves. Click, it's set. And just like the green enemy, you can change the minimum and the maximum. Just select him and right click. Or you can change the initial direction that he moves. It's just that simple. If you want to select multiple enemies, then hold down Control while you're clicking enemies. You can move them all at the same time. You want to select just one, click on him. You can move him. Once you've selected these guys, then his minimum and maximum move along with him. And there's pretty much just two other types of enemies. There's the yellow enemy, whose behavior is exactly like the gray enemy, except he can drop lightning bolts, does so completely at random. And then there's the purple enemy, who moves up and down just like the green guy, but he fires bullets randomly. And the speed at which they move is all preset. I don't have any options for changing the speed at which they move. The blue guy fires little bullets back at you. Doesn't move. It's completely random when he fires those bullets. Red guy doesn't move at all. He's almost like a destructible block, except if you're invulnerable you can walk right through him and it won't react. So that's pretty much it for exporting the palette and exporting enemies. I'm just going to keep putting enemies here because I want it to be, fairly thick with enemies. Want it to be interesting how you have to fight your way past all of these guys. There's no reason in the world why enemies can't overlap each other. To be honest, I think that the purple enemy is the most dangerous one. So there, it's all full of enemies, and while I'm at it, I think I can also show you how these eyes work. I think that this is a much better place to show you that than the original cell. I'm just going to switch to static blocks here. This open eye means it's showing the layer. So if I click on that, boom, the enemies all disappear. Click on it again, the eye opens, boom, the enemies are all back. This sort of helps you keep track of what's where. And if you just want to edit one layer, then you can easily do that. I mean, you can only edit one layer at a time, but if you only want to see one layer while you're editing it, then these things help with that. And this foreground button basically shows that big blue background. Click on this, the background disappears and you've got just white. And by default, the background, the distant background, is switched off. You can switch it on anytime you like, and as you scroll, the distant background doesn't really scroll with the foreground. That's the way it is while you're playing it. I figure it should be the way it is while you're editing as well. Switch this back on, that becomes invisible since there's no windows. Now, for export current view. This is the original purpose that I made export current view for. Let's see. I'll call this tutorial corridor enemy view. That actually exports it to a GIF file, which you can open up in Paint or what have you. And then voila. This shows the view which you saw in the editor. It exported it exactly the way it looked like in the editor. You can draw on it and basically draw your own background. But let's say that you want it to be just the static blocks, you don't want it to show the enemies. What you do is you simply switch the enemies off. Just close the eye that's next to the enemy layer, click Export Current View again, and I'll say this is tutorial corridor no enemy view.gif. Save it. Fire open Paint again. Tutorial corridor enemy nose. Now don't save the changes. And once again, it's exactly the way it looked. Now it's been my experience that when you open something up with Paint just after it's been exported like this, it does something to the color space, like maybe red no longer exists. You see? I chose red. Don't know if you can see that. I chose the color red, and the actual color that shows up is this gray thing. I'll choose magenta, again, gray. Yellow, gray. What you really want to do is copy everything, create a new image, and save that as a GIF. And then you'll be able to use the standard color space, whichever color you want, you get it. And then you can go ahead and make your background. And I will in fact use Paint to make a background for this. And I wanted to show you how you can export the view and better create a background for your rooms in Paint. So yeah, that's pretty much it.